Welcome everybody, Dan Goodwin here, God's Final Jubilee Ministries. We're glad you're with us tonight. This is November the 1st, 2017, in the evening. And more and more things going on in our country and across the world. You name it, wars and rumors of wars. You got to be asking yourself, what is going on? Tonight we're going to share with you what is going on. Obviously, there are three things going on. The world's being prepared for the return of Christ to get his bride, but that's not all. The world is also being prepared for the rise of the Antichrist and his kingdom. All right, and the world's also being prepared for God's final Jubilee. But I want to share with you tonight what's going on as far as the book of Daniel and what I see, all these things going on and what they seem to mean as far as I'm concerned. I want to read you a passage out of the book of Daniel, but before I get to that, I want to make a comment about the book. The new book is doing well. The Mystery of the Jubilee is doing very well. We just we did some interviews with Prophecy in the News recently. They have not aired yet, at least to my knowledge, they haven't. So keep an eye out for those. They'll be airing soon. You can go to southwestradio.com, srwc.com. We did a couple of interviews with them, and you can go to their archives and you can actually listen to those. Those are audio only. And so a lot going on. Let me say this. Many of you have asked about the ebook, a Kindle reader. It's uploading as I speak. I've uploaded the ebook to Amazon Kindle. It can take a couple of days, it says. Generally, it doesn't take that long, but so keep an eye out for that and watch my Facebook page, and I'll let you know when that's up. I'm thinking by tomorrow, maybe even late tonight. So keep an eye out on Amazon. The Kindle will be available for purchase at a very reasonable price, much cheaper, about a third of what you can buy the paperback for. It'll be there. And by the way, it came out very, very nice. The folks that did that for me came out very nice. I think you're going to enjoy that. And I'm also going to figure a way to put an ebook on the website. I did it a little different this time on Kindle. I didn't click the little box that gives them exclusive rights to my ebook. I'm going to put the ebook in some other places. One of them, I'm hopefully going to put it on my website as soon as we figure out how to do it. And there's a feature with it as well, by the way, that you can listen to it. In fact, you can speed it up, slow it down. There's a way to click on the ebook and listen to it in audio. It's a computer generated voice. It is not me reading it. I was quite surprised when I noticed that. And you can actually speed it up and read through it faster. So that may be something you'll want to look into. So that's coming here real soon. All right. Let's jump into this now. I'm going to put this over here because I've got something I'm going to read out of that in just a minute. What's going on out there? The world is being prepared for something. The world is being prepared for the one world order and the one world religious system and the rise of Antichrist and the removal of the saints and the beginning of the tribulation period, the 70th week of Daniel. Everything's falling into place. Now listen, when I post a lot of things concerning politics on my Facebook page. By the way, you can find me at godsfinaljubilee.com. And when you go there, you can get to my Facebook page, the YouTube channel, the podcast, everything, the bookstore, godsfinaljubilee.com. You can get to it all right there. But let me say this. I post a lot of stories, political things going on in our country on my Facebook page. You may think that that's kind of getting off subject. I'm telling you, it's not getting off subject. All of this stuff going on in our country are symptoms of something. They are symptoms of the steady and rapid move into the one world order, the one world system. And it is coming fast, my friends. This is all moving in. So I want to read you something in the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 2. I won't read the whole chapter, but you know Daniel chapter 1, Daniel is taken into captivity. All of Israel is removed from Israel. They're taken to Babylon. Daniel, we believe, is a 17-year-old boy at that time. A little bit later on, King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. but he can't remember his dream. He calls in all the wise men and asks them to tell him not only the meaning of his dream, but the dream itself. He couldn't remember it. And of course, nobody could do it until Daniel comes along. Daniel comes along and says, "O king, live forever. Dreams belong unto God." Daniel tells the king what his dream was and the interpretation of the dream. It's very, very interesting. By the way, very prophetic. And here's what he said. "Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image," let me get my glasses so I don't mess up here in my reading. "Thou, O Daniel, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king." Now this is Daniel chapter 2, and I just read from verses 31 through verse 36. You're hearing not only history in this passage, but you're hearing the future. What is the passage about? Nebuchadnezzar saw something in a dream that God gave to him. This wasn't just because he ate something before he went to bed. God gave Nebuchadnezzar a dream. And in this dream he saw an image. Now, it's called an image, but we understand this to be a statue with a head of gold, arms and a chest of silver, and of course the brass, and all the way down to the iron, and then the legs of iron and clay, remember? So what is this all about? And then, of course, a stone made without hands, that's the Lord Jesus Christ and his kingdom. That stone breaks the image of the statue, and it all crumbles into powder and blows away. And of course, the millennial kingdom will take over. So this dream that Nebuchadnezzar saw is, in fact, if you read the interpretation of it, and let me just read a little bit of it here. Daniel gives the king the interpretation. "O king, thou art a king of kings, for the God of heaven," verse 37, "power and strength and glory, and wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven, that hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over all. Thou art this head of gold," Daniel says to Nebuchadnezzar. By the way, Nebuchadnezzar is pretty happy about that. He's the head of gold, because and Nebuchadnezzar says, "Wow, that's great. I'm somebody. I'm the head of gold." Gold symbolizing great wealth, but not only wealth, but the head symbolizing great power and authority. What is God telling Nebuchadnezzar? God is telling Nebuchadnezzar through the prophet Daniel that the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar, which is what? Babylon, is going to rule the world. And they did at this time. And Nebuchadnezzar is the head of it. He is the head of gold. He's the head of that kingdom, the kingdom of Babylon, where this is somewhere around 605 BC. And by the way, this is all in the chapter in the new book, the chapter called The Mystery of Three Babylons. You're going to love that chapter. What I'm telling you right now is in the chapter, The Mystery of the Three Babylons. In fact, I have that very chart that I'm going to be reading from over here. That chart is in here. The chart, if you can see that chart over here has the four kingdoms of the world, beginning with Babylon, which is Nebuchadnezzar. The date is here. And I have the four kingdoms. So in the passage, let me read a little bit more of it. I won't read the whole passage, but he says, "After thee," so in other words, after the kingdom of Babylon, "shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee." All of these are inferior to the head of gold, which is Babylon. "And another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over the earth." So there's a third kingdom, the kingdom of brass. "And then the fourth kingdom," in verse 40, "shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things. And as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. Whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay, part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of the iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. That's happening right now. That's the different ethnic groups and the kingdoms of the world, the different cultures, the different languages, the different religions, the different moral values, all mixing together right now. And what happens to a kingdom when that takes place? Weakness. Weakness. See, Rome didn't have that. Rome was a mighty people. Who had this all, they didn't have any moral values. But they all were of the same belief and moral system. And they were very strong. They were iron. But this final king, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me give you the kingdoms of the world here as we read. The first kingdom that Nebuchadnezzar saw in this dream, he saw this statue, the head of gold he saw is Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babylon. He is the head of that kingdom. 605 BC, a long time, 2,500 years ago, right? That was actually in Daniel's day. This took place or began while Daniel is in captivity. And Babylon becomes the head of the world, a one world kingdom. Right? The one world order, which we're headed back to right now. The second kingdom that took over in place of Babylon, this happened while Daniel is still there. This is when Belteshazzar is the king. They believe it's the grandson of King Nebuchadnezzar. Remember, he's got all the vessels from Jerusalem and he's defiled them. And remember, he sees the handwriting on the wall. Thou art weighed in the balances and are found wanting. And that night, the kingdom of Babylon falls. And the Medes and the Persians come up through the sewers and through the tunnels and they take over the kingdom. This really happened. This is history. That's the second kingdom, the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. And so you read through the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah and the book of Esther. That's the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. That took over somewhere around 536. So about 70 years, right? After the 70-year captivity, the Medes and the Persians take over. They overthrow Babylon. Here's the second world kingdom that the Bible tells us about in Daniel chapter 2. Very important that you get this. This is very important to your understanding of prophecy. All right, so the first kingdom was in Daniel's day, the kingdom of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar's the head of gold. He's the head of that kingdom. After the 70-year captivity ends, somewhere around 536 BC, the Medes and the Persians take over. They overthrow Babylon, and they become the one world power. They last for quite a while, almost 200 years. Somewhere around 322 BC, the kingdom of Greece takes over. Now, you've seen movies, you've read books about it. That's Alexander the Great. Remember him? He takes over. And by the way, the Medes and the Persians, that's the chest and arms of silver that Daniel saw in the vision, or Nebuchadnezzar saw, and Daniel interprets for him. The head of gold is Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon. The arms and chest of silver are the Medes and the Persians, the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. And then Greece takes over. Greece is the belly and thighs of brass that we see in the statue. Remember the statue, the head of gold, the arms of silver, and the chest, and then we've got the belly and thigh of brass. That's the Greece, okay? And then Rome comes along. That's the legs of iron. Rome comes along somewhere around 63 BC. In other words, 63 some years before Christ comes on the scene as a little baby. Rome has taken over, and Rome is still in power when Jesus is born, and when Jesus comes to his maturity and begins his 3.5-year ministry. Rome is in power. They are a world kingdom. A fierce Rome kingdom, legs of steel, iron, and iron doesn't give. And iron just goes where it wants to go. That's the Roman Empire. So that's the fourth empire. So you've got Babylon, you've got the Medes and the Persians, then you've got the kingdom of Greece, and then Rome overtakes Greece 63 AD, 63 BC. Rome overtakes Greece, defeats Alexander the Great and his children, and or his kingdom there, and Rome takes over. And Rome will rule until for about 500 years or so, and then of course the fall of Rome. So where are we today? We are right now getting close to the next kingdom. What is the next kingdom? The next kingdom is the 10 toes that we read about in the statue. That has not happened yet. However, that is happening right now. It's forming right now. Remember what I read here about those 10 toes? And the fact that those 10 toes are part iron and part clay? That means they're not as strong as the Roman kingdom that they came from. They're weakened by the clay. Now, what is the clay? The Bible tells us here what that's all about. They mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. When you mix iron and clay, it's weakened. It's not as strong. It's kind of like cast steel. Cast steel is brittle. It's not strong like real steel. So this iron and clay mixed together is not as strong. And that's what that next kingdom that's coming on the scene, which, by the way, the 10 toes is the one world empire that the Antichrist is going to be in control of. I believe they're here now. I believe they're in place. I believe the only thing standing in the way is the removal of God's people, the saints, the church, and then those 10 kingdoms will enlist themselves, the Antichrist, Revelation 6, verse 1 through 3. They crown this man of sin, the one world leader. He'll become their one world political leader, the Antichrist. That's that fifth kingdom, which is the revived fourth kingdom. But by the way, it's not only just the fourth kingdom. This final fifth kingdom, mixed with miry clay and iron, has qualities of all four. That means it has some of the qualities of Babylon, some of the qualities of the Medes and the Persians, some of the qualities of the Roman Empire, and the Grecian Empire, Alexander the Great. They're all going to be mixed together into this final kingdom. And that final kingdom is going to be a smorgasbord of all the kingdoms of the world, from Babylon and King Nebuchadnezzar all the way through the Medes and the Persians and the Grecians, and then the Roman Empire and all their gods. And all that's going to be the final 10 toes that's going to make up the one world kingdom of Antichrist, him and his false prophet who's going to point people to him. It's all going to happen. It's happening right now. So you're wondering what's going on around us, what's going on here in America. America, the fabric of America is disintegrating before our eyes. You understand that we threw God out of this nation. In the 60s, we threw him out of our schools. We threw prayer out. We threw the Bible out. We threw moral values out. And you want to know why we're in the mess that we're in, why we're going down the road that we're going in, why nobody knows what's right and wrong anymore? Because there's no moral values anymore. What's it all about? It's all about the devil, Satan, pushing for this one world kingdom, which is almost here. One more huge crisis. These things going on today. The guy who drove through New York City on Halloween, and whatever's going on in Colorado today, all these things going on, these are just little things. These are little distractions. But I'm telling you, something big is going to push us over the edge, and martial law will come. The country will never be the same again. Something big is going to push us into the one world order. And somewhere around there, we're going to be out of here too, by the way. So, all right, so the Christ kingdom is the stone cut out without hands. That's Jesus Christ and his kingdom. That's Revelation 19. That's Jesus coming on the white horse. He smashes that one world kingdom. I love it. It's great, isn't it? He smashes the kingdom of Antichrist. That's the battle of Armageddon, by the way. That's the kingdoms of the world coming together to fight against Christ and his kingdom. And he smashes it to pieces and grinds it to powder, and it blows away in the wind. And Christ comes on the white horse, rides through the eastern gate, sets up the kingdom. And that's the final kingdom to come. All right, so this is great stuff here. But I want to share this with you as well. Make sure you understand this. Daniel chapter 2 is this story of the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had where he saw this statue. It's called an image. We call it a statue. The head of gold, the silver chest and shoulders, and the belly and thighs of brass, the legs of iron, and then all the way down to the 10 toes, which is the clay and iron mixed together. That part hasn't happened yet. But what I want you to realize is there's other places in the Bible that give us this same story. Did you know that? By the way, it's all in this book. In the mystery of the three Babylons, all what I'm telling you is in there. It's also in my Revelation study guide. But let me share with you the other places. Daniel chapter 7. So Daniel chapter 7 is the same story as Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar has the dream of the world kingdoms, and he sees them as gold, precious metals, and precious and valuable and powerful things. That's the way man looks at the kingdoms of the world. He looks at them as precious things, gold and silver, brass and iron, and things of authority and power and great wealth. That's the way man looks at the kingdoms of the world, including America. We tend to think America is some wonderful place. America is part of the kingdoms of the world. Yes, we had some Christian upbringing. Yes, we did some great things. Yes, we had some Christian roots. But America is gone today. We're just a pagan nation now. We're one of these kingdoms of the world. In fact, I believe we're going to head up the one world kingdom. I believe we're already doing it. And I believe I'll prove that to you in my chapter, The Mystery of the Three Babylons. I believe I'll prove to you that America is in fact in the Bible, and America does have a part to play in the end times, a huge part. And it's taking place right now. It's already happening. So Daniel chapter 2 is man's perspective of the world kingdoms. Daniel chapter 7 is God's perspective of the kingdoms of the world. What happens in Daniel 7? We won't turn there, but very briefly, Daniel has a vision in Daniel chapter 7. What does Daniel see? He sees the same world kingdoms that Nebuchadnezzar saw, only he saw them from God's perspective. How did Daniel see them? He saw the same kingdoms. He saw instead of a head of gold, Daniel saw a lion with eagle's wings. That's Babylon. Then he saw a bear. See, he saw them as animals. Let me go a little further. He saw them as wild beasts. That's how God looks at the kingdoms of the world, wild beast. My friend, that's how you better start looking at the kingdoms of the world. That's how you better look at Russia. That's how you better look at Germany. That's how you better look at Korea and Iran and Saudi Arabia and Canada and America. Wild beasts that cannot be tamed. Let me read on. Daniel saw in his vision that God gave to him about these kingdoms. He saw a lion instead of a head of gold. He saw a lion with eagle's wings. Instead of the chest and arms of silver, he saw a bear, a wild bear. And instead of the belly and thighs of brass, made of brass, he saw a leopard with 4 wings. And then he saw a dreadful beast. Instead of the feet of iron and clay, he saw a dreadful beast. And then instead of the 10 toes, he saw 10 horns, like 10 horns of a wild beast running at you with horns in its head. That's how Daniel saw what God wanted him to see. That's how God looks at the world. God looks at it as wild beasts and wild kingdoms of the world that cannot and will not be tamed. By the way, our forefathers understood this. Our forefathers gave us the Constitution. Read their writings. The Constitution was given to act as chains around the legs of the government to restrain it, because our founders understood. I'm talking about Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and Jackson, all those guys, Madison. They understood that the government was something to be feared. They understood that the government was a wild beast that had to be chained so that it would not devour those around it. Now, what we've done now in our generation, we've pretty much took the chains off the government. Government has become our great provider, our great protector. And by the way, they can all greatly destroy us. And by the way, they are. Oh my goodness, we're over $20 trillion in debt, this government of ours. It eats more every year. They can't feed this thing. It's a beast that you can't feed this thing enough to satisfy. You go ahead and raise taxes. Next year, they'll need more money. They won't cut spending. They won't tighten their belt. They won't loosen their grip on the food supply. They're going to need more and more. Why is that? Daniel told us in chapter 7. Because it's a wild beast that will not and cannot be restrained except by force and chains. And so then there's one other place in the Bible, Revelation chapter 13. So Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, and Revelation chapter 13 all go together. There's a passage in Revelation 13 that talks about these same kingdoms of the world. And they're mentioned in Revelation 13. They're called, instead of the head of gold or the lion with the eagle's wings, it's the mouth of a lion. The bear is called the feet of the bear. The leopard it's called like a leopard. And then a beast, instead of a dreadful beast, it's just a beast. And then the 10 horns again. What's different in Revelation 13 is they're mentioned backwards. Anybody know why? They're mentioned backwards because John in Revelation is seeing the kingdoms of the world in reverse. He's gone to the future and he's going backwards looking at the kingdoms of the world, where Daniel or Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 2, as well as Daniel in chapter 7, are seeing the kingdoms of the world going forward. Revelation 13 sees them going backwards, starting with the last and going back. Interesting, isn't it? So that's the kingdoms of the world. We've already experienced Babylon. We've already had the Medes and the Persians. We've had Greece. We've had Rome. Rome has fallen, but Rome is coming back. The revived Roman Empire, the 10 toes, the 10 horns is coming back, and it's going to be headed up by America. I'm convinced of that. I believe I'll prove it to you if you read the chapter in the book. And it's coming back. It is coming back. You say, well, Brother Goodwin, that can't be. The revived Roman Empire, the Antichrist, he has to come out of Rome. There's no doubt about that. He has to come out of the Roman Empire. Okay, let me ask you a question. Where did America come from? Has to come out of Europe, you say. Where did America come from? Where the lions come. We came out of England. That's who we are. Friends, you're listening to the God's Found Jubilee program. I'm your host, Evangelist Dan Goodwin. Go to the website, godsfoundjubilee.com. You can see the bookstore. Check out the new book, the chapter that I'm talking about, The Mystery of Three Babylons, all of this that I just shared with you tonight, all the stuff that's going on in America, around the world, everything's pushing towards something. It's pushing towards a one world system, the revival of the Roman Empire, and it's almost here, my friend. I want you to be ready. Get yourself ready. Be ready. The Lord's coming back. He's coming back sooner than you think. God'sFindJubilee.com. We'll see you next time.